The sea god. The sea devil. Are they the same? Are they two beings? Are they none? Oh, great Emu, help me please. Show me the answers. And Lord Emu
has provided.
Now we know, because our devilish savior bestowed upon me the true knowledge of what it means to be a sea god or a sea devil, because they are the very same thing. It's actually all right here in the Holy Gospel, aka the manga. Let's open our textbooks to chapter 1181 and flip over to page 11, and at the bottom we can see the devil himself, Big Papa Moose, say, God, devil, what's the difference? And once you start pulling on that very interesting thread, a lot of things in the story that haven't really made sense so far have begun to fully unravel. For example, the sea devil has always been framed as the enemy of devil fruit users, the one force that rejects them, punishes them, drags them down into the abyss. But at the very same time, across many different cultures in the One Piece world, we've also heard about this mysterious sea god, not feared, but worshipped, revered, protected. So, which is it? Is there one god and a devil? Is it the same person? Well, the answer is actually really simple. To the victor goes the spoils, or so they say, and by they, I mean our boy Don Quixote Doflamingo, because way back during Marineford, you might have remembered, he actually spelled out something very, very important for us, and it's something I've always considered, but could never really lock in as a fact. But now, with the latest chapters, we pretty much can finally do that. Pirates are evil, the Marines are righteous. These terms have always changed throughout the course of history. Whoever wins this war becomes justice. And that's the key. That's the goal now. Both Emu and Dofi paint the full picture for us when it comes to One Piece's divine figures. Vegapunk's lack of clarity on who was actually right and who was wrong during the Void Century might actually also play into this too, since, he could actually see both sides here. Gods and devils are one and the same thing in the story. Two sides, one very divine, powerful coin. The only difference really is who is talking about these beings. The various islands called their figures gods, except for Emu. The celestial dragons called these very same beings devils, except for Emu, and since Emu is the one who won at the end of the Void Century 800 years ago, he got to be God and the Sea Devil. And the D-Clan, they became the evil ones, the new demons. But now that of course raises another super interesting point. What about their powers? What does this reveal about gods and devils being the same thing mean for understanding the true upper limits of the gods of the One Piece world? Well, I think we can actually use Emu specifically to unravel a lot here as well. As you know, we've recently learned about Omen, the power that flows through all things apparently in a very hockey-esque way, which makes a lot of sense because in Japanese, Omen is actually spelled out with the kanji Maki, the devil's will, the devil's spirit. But how he used it though? What that mean? Well, you see, my friend, chapter 1181 is yet another one of those sneaky chapters that just keep on giving the more times we read it, because there was a break after and I had a lot of time, so I reread it again. Emu starts talking finally, and once he starts talking, dude, the man does not shut up. It's just lore drop after hint. Years of waiting for this dude to finally open his mouth, and now he's just opening it up super wide and is just yapping away. Emu explains a concept known as the Trinity of Domination. The steps and aspects of it are as follows. Humanity yearns for power, and when they gain it too easily, that leads to corruption. They will then partake in servitude to boost their own self-interest, aka covenants, and when their ambition is driven by enmity, it is the power of omen. So I don't know, but it really seems like Emu themselves have the power to corrupt, to create pacts, and to boost people's envy and drive through his omen powers. And when they do that, they have created and achieved domination over someone else. And according to Emu, domination is the only true way to achieve happiness in the world. Which objectively is of course just true. We can take it and accept it the way it is. But there is a little bit extra here that actually stands out to me, something that I've been talking about a lot recently, frankly, which is that Emu seems to suggest that our lovely little good guy Joy Boy may have also dominated people in pursuit of bringing happiness, bringing joy. And to me, that actually kind of reframes the entire narrative about gods and what their powers actually are. It's kind of made me think, what if Joy Boy wasn't just a liberator? What if to some people, he was actually a devil offering freedom at any cost? A pact made, a corrupted happiness, the power of their dreams. Is all of that also omen? Is that also domination? And if Emu can do it, and Joy Boy did it, does that mean that all of the gods in the One Piece world can actually do it? The forest, the sea, the earth, the sun, are they all devils who made different pacts for various different powers that we've seen throughout the series? And when I had that one thought reading the chapter, my brain went into maximum overdrive mode, analyzing everything God-related, which is nice because that's already my favorite thing to do in One Piece. We're talking the Harley text. We're talking random power system in One Piece. We're talking the Bible. That's right, I read it twice in the last 2 hours. Easy. You don't read at 10,243 words a minute. Bro, get your game up. And, well, that didn't help all that much, but then I read One Piece again, and that did help a lot. Because with this forbidden knowledge granted to me by the great and mighty the great and mighty Emu, the world of One Piece starts looking less like a couple of random independent power systems clashing with each other, and much more like a network of ancient pacts constantly fighting each other for actual devilish, or I guess godly, supremacy in the world. Let's start with Mu, the Dirt Devil. Now, am I certain at this point in the story that Emu is the Earth God? Nope, not really, still not 100%, and it does contradict some of my other theories from the past, but for now I still think it's the most likely option. Because in my personal opinion, which may or may not be your opinion too, let me know, the Earth God and or Earth Devil has some beautiful ties into Omen and the Abyss specifically. Just take another look again at that beautiful chapter 1138 mural and read the Harley text that comes stapled to it. Earth God, serpent of hell flames, black fire that erupts from the earth, satanic pentagrams etched into the ground, black flame omen balls and stuff. I don't know, to me, the Abyss seems inherently connected to the Hellflame Serpent and the Earth God themselves, so I don't really think it's crazy wild to connect Emu to that character. And of course, obviously, since he is the world and king of the world, Earth God makes a lot of sense here too, since, you know, he's the god of the Earth, or I guess the blue planet technically, but the One Piece Earth. Also, you know, they live as far away from the ocean as they can on the literal one piece of giant Earth on the Earth, which is the Red Line. And if Emu's power operates through domination and covenants, then the blue planet itself becomes the domain of binding agreements, binding vows even, Emu going all Sukuna, I guess. These deals with the devil connect the Gorosei's immortality, the Holy Knight's crazy powers, and even the entire idea of Domi Reversi as forced allegiance or overwritten will. Especially when we take another look at how Domi Reversi actually happens. Like the ground chunk flips into the earth itself, revealing the shadowy evil version of the character, and the ground between two Domi Reversi subjects turns other people into also Domi Reversi devils. So I feel like at the very least you can make an argument that this is some of the powers of the earth god devil person, and surely there is more here. Emu is one of the big bad guys in the story. I doubt we've already even come close to seeing everything they've got up their sleeve at this point, but how about the other god devils? How do I think would their covenants or contracts actually manifest in the story? What power did they grant that caused corruption? And do they even have this same trinity of domination rule that the other gods have too? I'm still a little bit on the fence for two of them. For example, I do think that our resident forest god devil behaves a bit differently than Big Moo. The forest god / forest devil starts to look like the origin point of devil fruits, especially the Harley text, of course, points out that the forest god tamed and sent forth his demons, depending on the translation, but it's really sent forth, right? And really, either of these words would work to sell my big point, I think. I believe that devil fruits themselves are the covenants and easy power granted by the forest god. Rather than making a direct pact with a person, Emu style, the forest god, based on what we know, seems to have instead made a more universal pact system with these fruits. Because let's be real, what are devil fruits if not contained demons, packaged power, abilities sealed into fruits, contracts with a smaller, lesser devil waiting to be consumed? If you want to, kind of like the most twisted gacha game of all time. You either can get a super rare Mark with a Phoenix fruit power, or Jacket Man. The world is your oyster if you dare to make a deal with the Forest Devil, and you might get something crazy or something that looks a little bit like this. Now, the jury's of course still out on if there are legit devils sealed inside devil fruits, such as the Lunarians and their souls, or the former D-Clan members, or hell, literally all the souls of the people who died in the First World, maybe. I've never talked about this. I don't think so, at least. I might be wrong. There are a lot of videos on this channel, but the whole First World mural depicting animals and creatures getting onto the Ark Noah boat may actually be like the creatures and things sealed inside of devil fruits for all we know. Devil fruits, especially Zoans, seem to have a will and spirit of their own, and that may all be because of the forest god's covenants. So a devil fruit user may be making a much smaller pact with a bigger payoff and less of a heavy price, since they do align with the devil or power sealed in their fruit in exchange for losing the ability to swim. But I don't really think that it actually matters if one devil made all the fruits or a bunch of little devils are in each single devil fruit and they all have tiny contracts. What does matter instead is the symbol of making a deal. Something that is like biblically one of the most OG deals with the literal devil, which is of course Adam and Eve eating the apple, the forbidden fruit provided by the serpent, the devil, in the Garden of Eden. I really feel like it doesn't get more on the nose than that, people, and you know that that's kind of what Oda has been going for very much from the beginning. As for the forest god having other powers that would match maybe with something like Omen, I think maybe they'd just be on some soul manipulating stuff, right? It would explain how they may have gotten souls into devil fruits, but also, as some of you know, I'm really big into the idea that Chopper is currently the new forest god / forest devil himself, especially after him just like pimp slapping the Domi Reversi out of the giants on Elbaf. It may be that the forest god hard counters the Domi Reversi ability of the earth god, keeping them in check, which I think is actually a huge point of discussion here, as it kind of seems like the god abilities might also behave in a way where each of them counters another one, like a rock, paper, scissors, I don't know, well, that's something we had in Germany, like something like four things that kind of, you know, behave in like a weird, I guess what's like a good example? Like, for example, I guess you can have the power system from Hunter x Hunter, you know, like each type kind of counters the other one. And I say this not only because of the Chopper thing, but also the devil fruit's key weakness, which seems to be tied to the sea god devil's covenant as well. The sea god devil, based on what we know, feels like some sort of enforcer of balance. In like a very shonen anime power system way, it seems like the Sea Devil's Pact isn't about granting other powers, but instead stripping other powers away. Devil Fruit users gain very unique and broken abilities, but in exchange, they lose to the sea. That's not random, that's transactional, that's the rule now, that's the goal, like a contract baked into reality itself. Rather than making a covenant with an individual, it feels like the Sea God Devil's Pact is actually imposed on reality itself in a weird way. Like, I'm just a little bit spitballing here, of course, but it feels like the Sea Deity's Pact is a universal rule applied to those who consume the devil fruits, removing their ability to swim and gaining a weakness to the Sea Prism Stone as well, which kind of makes me feel like the Sea Devil rivaled the Forest Devil and the Sun Devil rivaled the Earth Devil. And while I'm on the thread of the Sea God Devil's powers here, it also feels like maybe that could also be tied into Emu's little, blood coughing that they do when they head down to the mortal realm, to the regular surface after leaving Marijoa. I know I've mentioned this at some point in some video, but I really think there could be a really high chance that Emu being so close to the ocean is inherently nerfing their powers and hurting them, which would explain why he tends to always stay up so high away from the sea on the red line, away from the ocean. At the very least, it would explain why the Gorosei were so worried about Emu leaving the Holy Land in chapter 1179. Emu may have a baked-in weakness to the ocean due to consuming the devil fruit or the devil's fruit that they were revealed to have. Which raises another interesting point, because Emu, being the Earth God Devil, may not have prevented them from making a pact with another one of the other devils. Now, this could potentially actually hint at the notion of the God Devils being paired in some way, shape, or form. Earth and forest together, sun and sea together. I think you could make the point that Poseidon from the Void Century was maybe the sea god devil, and we know from the poneglyphs that she had a very deep connection to Joy Boy, our own sun god devil of that era, so there would be some precedent for that idea. Especially after seeing that Emu has the devil fruit, I feel like, somewhat confident pairing these two gods up in that specific way. Now, obviously, since he is the main character and the final god devil we need to talk about, let's now delve into the powers of the sun, Luffy, Joy Boy, and Nika's powers/pacts. Based on everything that we know, Luffy's power doesn't really feel that much like a contract at all. It honestly feels like the exact opposite of that. Liberation, freedom, laughter, unbound will. But clearly, these pacts could be operating in some totally different ways. Covenants imposed on individuals who ask for them, covenants imposed on fruits, granting power to those who choose to consume them, or a pact made against the world, preventing power from growing too out of control. Which would also explain, by the way, why you would need a big flood, kind of reset everything. So who's to say then that Luffy's pacts have to operate in one of these ways? Honestly, it kind of feels like they all operate completely differently, and so should his, and I do think I know exactly how his might work and what they're based on, everything that we've seen and heard throughout the series so far. Because I believe that Luffy's pact may be a more passive effect, not something that he actively imposes, but just does by nature of existing, or people want to actively do whenever they interact with Luffy. Kind of just like how the sun provides light to the entire world and everything relies on it, but the sun doesn't try to do that, it just kinda does. The people of the world, the animals of the world, anything in the world with a will may just be subjected to the sun god devil's influence. Where the other gods may demand servitude or obedience, the sun god might create bonds through inspiration and, liberation instead of a more traditional sense of domination. Which, of course, in a warped sense, still creates a kind of pact. I mean, especially based on how we see characters completely shift their personality and ideals to fall in line with Luffy's personal dream, truly worshipping him. Like, that's what happens with his entire crew. Luffy saves people and they pledge allegiance freely to him. The Straw Hats, various of the villains, most people who have just ever interacted with Luffy, they're all influenced by that big dumb smile and his gumption. Remember, we talked about this. Mihawk states that this is Luffy's greatest power during Marineford. He says it's not a devil fruit or some cheap trick. One by one, he turns the people around him into allies. More than anyone else sailing the seas, that man possesses the most terrifying power. Funnily enough, I just actually realized, talking about this, that Mihawk may have been literally pointing to the Forest God and Earth God's power here, saying that it's not a fruit or a cheap trick. I mean, Mihawk may have some choice opinions on the other gods, who knows, but what matters most here is that he turns the people around him into his allies, and that might not be their choice. Or maybe it is, I don't know. It kind of feels dark if Luffy is subtly, by liberating people, putting them into servitude and into domination. But I do love the idea of his power also being a little bit twisted. I mean, Luffy is the first person to tell you that he is not a hero. So maybe, just maybe, the true power of the Sun Devil is influence and liberation in the most freaky way possible. A very subtle, very nuanced change in their minds, freeing them from their shackles, which Luffy does everywhere, and then by doing that, rallying them to his side and making them loyal. That also would explain why Emu thinks that Joy Boy dominated people, because, well, he would have done that if that's the case. He just does it by accident, or maybe Joy Boy knew about his influence and used it in some, not super good guy ways. And thinking about that, Shanks seems to have a very similar presence, since pretty much everyone around him respects the guy and falls in line with him. Marines, pirates, hot bartenders, you name it, they love themselves a piece of Daddy Shanks, so maybe his power is more aptly tied to Hockey, potentially. Hockey Man Shanks, Hockey Man Luffy, and Hockey Man Joy Boy seems pretty valid, especially when you again consider that Emu has Omen, aka Maki, so maybe the Sun God Devil, who's kind of like the opposed force here, would be the person who created or brought Hockey into the world as a counterbalance, and the highest form of Hockey being this subtle power of influence, because again, willpower conquers Hockey. It's kind of all about subjugating people to your superior will. Low-key, that may even be why Mihawk, of all people, recognized it and was the one who Oda used to explain this power of Luffy's out of anyone else who was there at Marineford, because Mihawk is someone incredibly close to Shanks and may very well understand it better than anyone else. I personally still love the idea that Mihawk was bad, but then Shanks liberated him, and that's why they're like rivals, but also kind of buddies and drink together. Alright, but that's how the God Pacts would work, I think. But is that the true extent of it all, right? Well, I'm honestly not so sure. I think that covenants may just be the future thing of One Piece, the power of the endgame, what everything has been leading towards, the thing that unites all the strange different parts of the power system that have seemed separate so far. And now we get to the part where this theory starts bleeding into everything in the series at large, because my crazy theory mind is wondering, based on the fact that covenants are real and these god devils use them, are they the only ones who can do it, or is this a system that anyone can potentially tap into? Because remember, we've already seen objects in One Piece gain power through what I assume is deeper willpower. Black Blades, for instance, don't just become stronger through use, they become something else. But we still haven't got an explanation for how that one specifically actually works, and I recently just talked about how Omen, or these covenants, may be how a Black Blade is actually formed. Some sort of soul contract between a person and their weapon, or take someone like Emeth, the ancient Iron Giant, because that X marking on his arm, it could easily be symbolic, a way for us, the viewers or readers, to tie Joy Boy and Luffy together. But what if it's actually something more? Like, I don't know, a mark of a covenant that he made with Joy Boy, more similar to how Emu does them on people, and the X is actually like the Sun God's power here. A perfect option is the Straw Hats marking themselves with an X in Alabasta, a symbol of trust and unity. But what if in the final saga that symbol actually evolves, like Emu's covenants do? Vivi, of course, brought it back with her little newspaper sneaky surprise, so what if it also becomes a literal covenant mark for Luffy? Like, this could be the sort of Gear Reverse Awakening thing that everyone and their mom is predicting. Pact Gear 6, call it whatever you want. But it would be the perfect counter to Emu's covenant system by having your own, the Sun God version. They got all these cool emu tattoos. Meanwhile, Luffy starts slapping X's on people's arms and is Jolly Roger, and they become Gear 5 Nika versions of everyone. Just imagine a scenario where Luffy's commanders don't just fight alongside him or for him, but they're actually empowered by his own abilities. Not controlled, not enslaved, but still directly connected to him through a covenant, through a pact. I would absolutely rip, I think. Gear 5 Nidhogg Loki tearing through hordes of demons. Gear 5 Yamato crushing people with Divine Bagua. Devil Angel X plus Ultra Nico Robin spreading liberation through infinity punches. God, it would be pretty sick. Let's not kid ourselves here. And if power in the final saga really does come down to covenants and connections, then I don't think that the real question is gonna be, can Luffy beat Emu? I think it really comes down to who can make the better and more powerful pacts with the people around them. Because if Emu has the Holy Knights bound by Omen and Domination, then Luffy might need, say, his own 13 top commanders who can kick their butts with the power of liberation. And if you want to know who I think will fill those spots, you should check out this video right here if you haven't yet. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of this idea. I personally like it quite a lot. One of the less crackpot, actually more like I could see it happening theories, but if you disagree or you have other ideas that support it, let me know in the comments, and thanks to all of our Patreons who are absolutely fantastic. I'll see you in the next video.